At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Gao, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Doug. I normally love to start this by just extending my greetings to your audience as well. And I do that in my native language.
Okay.
So, dumelang, lokai. And the direct translation of that, dumelang is agree, lokai is where are you, as in locate yourself. And the question is, when you are showing up today or every time when you're showing up by Inspire Vision with Dr. Doug, what is your intention? What is it that you wanna get from this? And where are you? Are you fully here with an intention to receive something new, or you are coming with your cup full? So I'm just inviting you for this time around that we're just gonna be here. Choose to be fully present and not in your mind, not with what you know, but allow your body to communicate with you, because normally we tell our body what it feels and all that, but this time around, make it the other way around. Let your body communicate with you, those sensations and all that.
Okay, so where are you located right now?
I'm actually in Germany right now. I've been living in Germany for 10 years.
Okay, and originally you're from?
Botswana in Southern Africa.
Okay, I would love for you to share your story with the audience of you've had some amazing experiences from what I can tell. I'd love for you to share those experiences and what motivated you to kind of become and get to the point that you are now and what you're doing.
Thank you. What motivated me? I just love that question. I just come from a very traditional family back in Africa. And one thing that is big for me is being our unique self and embracing who we are. And I would say when I was young, I just knew who I was. I was the queen and I knew I was a queen. But we live in a society where often the society, the family, the culture, the religious system, educational system, medical system, political system tells us who we are before we can find out who we are. Or even when we know who we are, it's kind of like a battle. You have to rebel to embrace who you are. So I went through that as well, where my mother, what my mom used to say, she's late now for more than 10 years, but she always used to say, you are not like my other children. And it's something that I've always known since I was a child. And somehow I thought I was okay with it, because even from that, I would say, rebel inner child response, I was just like, yeah, that's why my name is different, so I can't be like them. But I realized later that somewhere along the way, I forgot who I was. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to be accepted. And this was playing out in toxic relationships that I found myself in. This was playing out not only romantic relationships, but also toxic relationships at work. And life has its way of bringing us to ourselves. That is the thing that I valued the most, which was like my corporate job. It was my identity. I just loved sharing that, oh, I'm an accountant at this company, and just what comes with that. But deep down, I was dying. I was disconnected. I hated my job. And as much as I was going to work, thinking that I'm working hard for my children, but I was never present as well for my children. I would come home at 2 a.m. in the morning. We have to rush so that I can drop them. So I lost my job. And that was the moment that was defining. But at the same time, it's kind of like I observed two aspects of myself at the moment. My human was scared, because the question was, how am I going to pay my children's school fees? How am I going to pay the mortgage? And all these stories. But at the same time, for me, it was like, this is the moment. This is like, there was that deeper whisper. This is the moment for your freedom. And I was like, okay, as many people didn't want to volunteer for the voluntary package, I took it. And the same year, I had a dream of my younger brother having an accident. And I told him I had a dream, and this was so real, because The conversation I was having by myself when I was going through it, it was so real. It's exactly what we normally talk about. And he said, I'm still going to be here for a long time. And 2 weeks afterwards, the accident happened. And I remember when I saw him lying by that bed, fighting for his life. After that visit, I went back to my room and I closed the door and I cried. And while I was crying, my prayer was, God, save him, and I'll do what I came here to do. Somehow I knew that I'm running away from myself, but I didn't know what that is going to cost me, because the reason why we don't follow our purpose, we're afraid of paying the price. So a year after, I lost my mom, and then I went through the judicial injustice of being separated from my children, and my children were my strength. I felt like I was living for them. So through that heartache, through that feeling powerless and all the shame, because as women we identify or we are esteemed by our children, so I didn't know who I was. And I remember one day when I came from work, that was after I moved to Germany, because I took the brave of relocating from Botswana to Germany without my children, because that was the whole agenda, to say no, you can't move with the children and all that, and even other, yeah, baseless case. But at the end of the day, I lost many times. I appealed many times and I lost my case. And I moved because I felt like if I'm gonna be here, I don't think I'll live for long. And one day when I was coming from work, I just had the nudge to start writing, and I started writing. And the questions that came through were, who are you without your mother? Who are you without your father, without your religion, without your house, your job, your husband, your wife? All these questions. And at first I was writing, just writing, but detached. What caught my attention was, who are you without your children? And that's when I started boiling, and and it's kind of like the pen was even bending, because I dropped it and I said, this message is for me. And the next thing was, but who am I? So the who am I was another journey. But on the other hand, it brought me to being where I am and doing what I'm doing. Because I believe truly what we are here to give birth to, what our soul desires, is what is built within us. But we often listen outside without listening what is within us. So I found myself where I was always meant to be, but I was running away from myself, and hence the pain and all that I went through. Yeah.
And it's interesting. You talk about who am I, and I think about, from a religious standpoint, Christ saying, I am that I am. And, I think that, you talk about Buddha, and he talks about really finding out who you truly are and getting rid of all of this external stuff that's happening. I think it's fascinating that, as you say, we live our lives for other people. We tend to be imposters in our
Yeah.
life because we're not really who we are. And for you to go through that process and have that realization, I think is phenomenal. And what amazes me and fascinates me is that you can have a dream like you did about your brother, and be able to warn him. And obviously, he still had the accident. So, where do you feel that comes from? Where do you feel that type of insight? Because I know that you have that. Where does that come from?
The I am, the nothingness and the everything, the one who knows. And this is something that also scares us, because for me, since I was a child, I knew what I knew. And one other thing that I couldn't shake off, especially, was, but why am I dreaming only about bad things and they end up happening? For me, that was a question that I had. And another thing was, why would you show me something that I can't change? So these are the questions that I just had back and forth with God or whoever, that consciousness, since I was a child. So I believe that we all have this to a certain extent within us. But like I said, we listen outside of us. We don't trust that inner voice. And actually, what is coming to mind is, even when you're talking about, like, whether it's the mother wound, the father wound, all that is coming through because there is an authority just since from when we are children, that tells us what we think is the truth. Like we believe them and all that. And when you are raised by a parent who somehow they deny your truth and they want you to believe what they think is true, eventually you also deny your truth. You don't believe your truth. You don't trust your truth because you buying whatever that you are told. So I believe this is the truth that is from within us, from that I am.
Yes, and you know what's fascinating? I know you talk about using African ancient quantum medicine, and the word that strikes me there is, well, a couple of words, ancient obviously, but quantum also, because, I'm not sure most people really understand this sense of quantum physics, the quantum field that exists out there, and the information that is there. And as I look at that, I think, you know what? If there is no time within the quantum arena and the field, that means that literally, if you can tap into that, you can literally experience the future or see the future or whatever that happens to be. So what ultimately brought you to the point of what you're doing now, and what is it exactly that you are doing now?
Mm. I would say with that journey of who are you and me wanting to know that, it's quite interesting because the first thing that I was led to, it was just like that voice again coming through and it said, "You want to know who you are?" And I said, "Yeah." And that was it. Then it went quiet. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'm gonna sleep. So I went to bed. And as soon as my head hit the pillow, I went into this trance. And I just felt this nudge like from within, I am. And I had to say my name, my first, my second, and my last name. And I could say my first name. When it comes to the second name, I couldn't. I tried to push through, I couldn't. And at the end, it's kind of like a portal opened. And I connected with what was happening at the time when I was given the second name, what my paternal family felt like, because they had a problem with my mom, and I didn't know because my mom was even late. I was like, I wish she was alive. And there was just like that argument to say that the child of this woman can be named this because they felt somehow superior and all that, So I went there and I started clearing all this name and all that. But I was more still be operating from those approval seeker mask, like wanting validation. And I wanted to belong somehow, even though I was on my path. So at first, when I heard people talking about, oh, I'm channeling the angels and all that, and I was just like, oh, that would be good, especially having a religious background. So I'll be like, yeah, channeling angels. Imagine if I go and tell my family that, oh, I'm channeling this angel and all that. That would be good. So I tried to follow that. And when I tried to follow that, I was shutting off. And here I was struggling. Like I felt like I don't know what my gifts are. And at the end, I was just told, you need to go back to your roots. You need to go back to your roots. So I was like, okay, whatever. I started now sitting and calling in my ancestors and all that. And before I knew it, I connected even with things that at first they would scare me out. But on the other hand, when I was connecting with other realms and even everything that is, all the other animals, all the serpents and all that, there was a part of me that was like, I felt home, like this is home for me. But at the same time, I would still observe my human, like, what would people think about me if they get to know that I'm having conversations with these creatures and all that, but I had to trust myself and also had to lean in this. And there were some activations that was happening while I was still, whether I was out of body, whether I was in meditation, whether it was just in my dreams, having these visits. And I just knew it's kind of like it's something that I've always known, it's something that I've done many times. I just knew, and I got to trust even more of my gift and how it works. Because when I started, even when I'm talking about that psychic surgeon that is removing whatever that is, when I started at first, I removed the pain and then I was holding into it. For me, if I'm working with you, I'll remove the pain immediately from you, and you're pain free just like that. And I'll hold on it maybe for a week or more working on it. So I had to learn to release all that and just trust the process. And eventually I was just doing it how it has always been done, which is like you remove it and you just let it go, and that's it. I don't have to hold it for me to feel the pain or anything. So I would say it's part of me, and it's built in me. And what I had to do is just to accept and trust that my path is different, my work is different, and it's unique for me. So when I let go of that approval seeker marks, wanting to belong, wanting validation, everything came together because everything has always been here. But at first, I was going outside of me to look for that. But it all starts with that name. Because as much as we are human beings, we are born into a family, there is a name that we are given. And there's a lot of templates in there, which at times, even when you're talking about self-acceptance, the acceptance or not being accepted, those rejection and abandonment, they come from our lineage, especially when there's those games that are playing between whether it's the maternal and the paternal, and how long has that been going on. So at times we need to go there and also deal with, even when I look at with me, for many generations, my family, I would say they ran away from this gift, and the first thing, even when I was a child and I was sharing what I was sharing, the first thing was like, oh my God, you need to go to church. Otherwise, you're going to be a traditional doctor. So there was that fear of, that's not okay. Don't do that. So that as well, it creates certain wounds that you may need to work on for you to find out what is it that happened in between for them to fear that. Because as much as they knew what they knew or they thought what they thought, at the end of the day, they turn their back on themselves. And when you turn your back on you, it's only pain that you're going to go through. It's also even the fear of darkness and all that, especially people who are often gifted. The wound at the same time is like fear of the dark magic and all that, because they have a gift that they're being called to use, which even with me, I remember truly when I knew that I don't have any choice. The words that came through was, it's time for you to do what you came here to do. And my question but was, what is that? And I was taken out of the body. And I connected with a lot of people being in pain. And I came back to my body. And the question was, do you want to sit with pain, with that gift, while other people are in so much pain?
Well, and you talk about generations, and what I find fascinating, as we talk about, coming back to who we really are, I think there's a lot of fear of individuals because they're worried about what they're going to actually discover. And my question and my thought, but my question to you too, is how much of that fear is based on generational trauma that has been included in the DNA, and so it comes out, subconsciously or consciously. All of these things that we're afraid to find out who we really are, when in reality, all of those are imprints that have been placed on us by family, religion, generation, whatever that happens to be. And if we can eliminate all of that away, we can discover who we truly are. And as you explain that, who are we? Who are we truly, from an individualistic standpoint and from a general standpoint? Who am I? Who are you? And getting rid of all of that imprint, who are we?
I just love this conversation. I love the questions. And truly most of it is not, it's not ours. It's what has been repeated for many generations, and we just bought into it. This is why, for me, like one of my first pillars is freedom of individuality, that is disconnecting from anything, even from the collective consciousness. Because even for you to help anyone, whether it's people who are like, oh, I just want peace for the whole world, you can't help anyone have peace if you don't have peace within yourself. Because when you look at the
Yes.
conflict that is there, the conflict is often coming from us. When you look at us even having a problem with men or with women, is the disconnection of the masculine and feminine energy from within us. So when we work with this disharmony from within, then we are able to create the harmony outside of us.
Well,
So
and I love the statement, "What you are thunders so loud in my ears that I can't hear what you say," and I think that that's so true. That we attempt to do certain things, but unless we have become and understand who we genuinely are, which in my opinion is just full of goodness and kindness and light and grace and all of that, we can never really reach out and help other people because there's always that sense of disingenuousness that occurs.
often there is something that we want in return. It doesn't matter how much you think it's good, like it's coming from a good whatever. But when you look at it, it's coming from I want something in return, or even a part of us that is not able to deal with that which we call chaos, because even the chaos is still the judgment of what is. This should not be. This is how somebody should not be. I still remember when I was going through my divorce, and in one of the meditation, the question that came through was, but what part of you has a problem with him being an alcoholic? Because my ex-husband had a problem with alcohol. So I was asked that question, and from a human thing, I was like, what kind of question is that? Because, alcohol is bad. Here I am good. I'm spiritual and all that. And so I was just like, I don't understand this question. But at that moment, I just got this download and I realized that it's not about him. It's about me and my father. I'm looking for my father in him. So I want him to stop this addiction so that he can give me the love. So there is an underlying thing that we need, whether we are aware of it or not.
Well, and as you talk about, and this gets to be interesting, but as you talk about you're wanting the love that you experienced from your father, if I understood you correctly, and seeking that from your husband, which is not happening, obviously, the question that I think sometimes we're attracted to different people because we have a need, but at what point in time can we find that we're genuinely finding those relationships, not because of our need, but because of who we are and who they are, and somehow that connection occurs?
When we get to a point where we can give, because I'm big on the inner child. When you integrate this aspect and you give it what it needs, it doesn't have to go and look for that outside of you. It still brings us back to the freedom of individuality. That is when I'm whole as a person and I don't need someone to give me something. It's more like we are coming together in partnership. And you can look at it from when there's that need, there is that hunger, like you even want to own somebody, but it's a different thing of just being interested in the other being, to say, what is it that you want in life? What do you want to create in life? How can I support you? Because you are just interested in somebody's expansion, not I want to get this from you, love me or give me something so that I can feel safe. So when it's coming from the way, you are okay even if the relationship does not work out, because for you it's kind of like we're just gonna meet and see what we can do to expand each other's life, and it's more again being interested, like, because if you don't have a vision, if you're not living for anything, then it's kind of like, what can I do for you? So there is nothing there to discuss. There is nothing more that is more expansive for us to add into each other's life. And one thing that I also say, even at times I find this, it happens even with women, but mostly men, at times they're looking for somebody who kind of like, they want someone who they can feel more like power over, kind of thing. Like, okay, I have this money and you need some money. I say this, women bring the emotion, like that emotional availability. Like, I'm gonna feel emotions for all of us, and men are like, I'm gonna bring the money, and that's the codependence that is playing out. And when you look at it, this is where, like, you are half, I'm half, and then we need each other for us to be whole. So there is still somebody who needs something from the other. It's not like I'm whole, and if at all you don't feel expansive in this relationship, I'm not gonna fight you anything. I'm just gonna love you because I want the best for you. I mean, when we are in a relationship where this can be, where we don't look at it as if, oh, you wanna leave me so you don't love me anymore. I know you love me enough for you to create a space for me to find something that can be more expansive for me. And I'm letting you go because I know there is something for you. Your soul wants to expand, and I wish that for you. For me, that's what we call true love. Not like you belong to me, I own you. When you leave me, then it shows that you don't love me, because the truth of it is love is always present. The reason why we are hurting is because we don't want to feel the love, especially if we are not with that person.
Well, and that's true. One of the things that really attracted me to having you on the show was I find that there are so many different modalities that people use to help heal people from their emotional trauma and all of those type of things. You're using something called African ancient quantum medicine. I would love for you to share with the audience what on earth is that, because I've never heard of it before.
It's just going back to our roots, because especially when you're talking about Africans before we kind of like disconnected from who we are. It's just the being. So with my work, when I connect with somebody, I don't come with, oh, this is what I know, or this is, I don't know. I just come with the not knowing, and I allow the body to communicate with me, because the body is one of the magical conscious thing that we have. It's a magical vehicle, and it's the light body that no matter how much you want to evolve, if you are not in the body, mm, yeah, it's going to interfere with the evolution, because you are not present to even receive the codes that are coming through. Even if it comes to the manifestation, whatever that you want to create, you are not going to be able to create that because you are not in the body. And I just compare the creation as the same creation that we have when we are creating a child and giving birth to a child. You can't give birth to what you do not conceive. So I connect with somebody and see what is coming through in the body. And often from the years that I've done this, the things that are often popping up, it's ancestral, like those generational parents. And another thing is the inner child. This is for me what I call magnetic confidence, because it doesn't matter even if I want to ask questions or talk about something else. If the inner child is feeling like I'm hurting, or I want you to have a look at this, it doesn't matter what I've planned. The inner child will come through with all sorts of emotions and just express what is happening. My favorite session was embodying like my client as an adult, and also embodying the inner child, and kind of like we're having a conversation, the three of us, but it was just the two of us in that call. So it's that. And another thing is also the sexual energy, which often there is shame around it. And when I go through the inner child, if there has been some, whether it's sexual abuse or some sexual disconnection, because truly it's not even about sexual abuse. We live in the world where, from since we're just children, sex is a sin, and I think it's something that is even there in the Bible. So we are not connected to this life force energy at an individual level. It's something that is somewhere in the dark, in somewhere, we're afraid of talking about it. We don't embrace it, but yet it's that life force energy that also makes us say yes to life. It's that life force energy that also helps and accelerate our evolution. Because if it's not running through our life, then somehow we are dead. This is why a lot of people often they find themselves in depression, and even the medication, when you go take the medication, it makes it worse, even when I look at the connection with the sexual energy and also the embodiment part. So my work is basically more in the body, but still, even if it's in the body, it's through that I get to expand like multidimensional and see what is it that is really needed here. But I start with us being here, because the most important life that we have is this life that we are living right now. The most important thing is this body. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you talk about sexual energy, I know on your website you are very specific saying, it's just not, we're not just talking about sex. We're talking about an energy that comes from which chakra? Is it the root chakra, the sacral chakra?
Sacral, yeah.
Yeah, that energy that comes forth that helps to really drive us in our life. And obviously, sex is a part of that. But more importantly, outside of that, are you suggesting that that type of energy, and you call it sexual energy, but that type of energy is really necessary to tap into to really experience a full life?
It is. It's everything. I mean, whether we're looking at it at the sexual part, which it's not like the main thing, because like it's a sexual activity. If at all, I've seen a lot of people who at times are just having sex because there's something that they feel that it's missing. But the more they're sleeping with many people, the more they feel empty. Because it's lovely, it's orgasmic, but at the same time, I see it as a very dangerous energy in the sense of it can open you to, besides the disease and all that, it can open you to other entities. You can open that portal where I don't even know how to put it or what to say or not, what not to say. Here's the thing, when you're talking about entities, or even whether it's I mean, I can look at it from the African perspective, I can the other perspective, whether it's astral, where something is being sent to you or it's attracted to you, and you start sleeping with something, but you don't know what you're sleeping with. So there is those entities that can come through that. That's why it's very important to also, even when it comes to the people that we are being intimate with, we get to be cautious. What is it that I'm allowing, even when it comes to the thoughts? Because when you look at it, especially energetically, it can be through the thoughts that you are opening that door, especially if it's coming through as an addiction. And even for people who have an addiction issue, at times it's because they're being driven by these entities that want something out of them. And it's kind of like you become, it's an addiction that is sucking life out of you because you are not using this life force energy to create what you desire. But when you are cautious about it and redirecting it to what you need more of, you're going to use it wisely. You're going to create the things that you desire. You're going to have that energy. You're going to feel alive. So I suggest that we connect to it, but at the same time, we get to be careful not to use it as a drug because it's like a drug, truly, or even more than a drug when you're
Yes.
having it. Yeah.
And anything, what I have found, and in fact, as I've done some behavioral analyses with people, and as we identify what are their strengths based on their personality and so forth, what always comes to my mind, and one of the things I always share is, if not used correctly, that strength can become a weakness. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. I want to go back to this inner child concept because everybody uses words to describe based on their perception of what it
Yeah.
is. And yet, as you're talking, what you're really suggesting, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that we really need to get back to that inner child. We need to get rid of all of that external imprints that have come through generations and, obviously even present time, and really discover that inner child. What is your definition of an inner child? Who does that look like? Because so often we use the word child and we think about, I think about my little grandson who's just crawling around and creating all sorts of havoc and everything else. But when we talk about inner child, what are you really describing? Who am I if I'm discovering my inner child? Who are you if you discover your inner child?
That's a great question. An inner child is an aspect of ourselves, and I'm going to expand it as well to past life thing because it's like the same thing where when we say we've had other past life, it's kind of like, what are you talking about? Because there's no other person that I can say this is who I was in 18th century or 15th century and all that. But when we come back to the inner child, there was me who was 5 years old. I don't that particular aspect is not alive as in like in physical reality where I can say, look at my inner child, it's here, it's a physical being, but it's within me because we are all that we've ever been, even though we may not be that like in physical, we can't separate it from ourselves, but it's all within us. So the inner child is that aspect of ourselves that was once I want to use the word innocent, but at the same time, part of me is like, no, because that's what we believe that, oh, a child is just like innocent, and like from the human perspective, this is the truth. A child doesn't know anything, a child gets to learn. But when I look at it from the soul perspective again, because an inner child is kind of like looking at that soul that is coming through as young, or that was once young, but I'm looking at it from either this lifetime or other lifetimes. I had what is coming through, just to share, is when my last born was born, she was young, and I would say that was just like an innocent child, as we say. But because of my gift, that was an amazing experience, because when I held that child, the anger that was emanating from her body, I was feeling it coming through. Like every time I would put her in, I felt like I want to punch the walls and everything. This was like a few months baby that was holding all this thing from other lifetime. And I also had an experience with other inner children, even with my inner child. I'm just going to share my story, where I had this inner child come through. I thought, because I grew up as an angry child. So for me, it was like, oh, it's because of whatever the dysfunction that was happening in my family. That's why I had so much anger. But then one evening, I just received this question as well. Do you want to know why I'm angry? And I'm like, yeah, I want to know. And that disappeared again until I was about to sleep. Then it's kind of like I was teleported to a lifetime where this little child was molested by her father in that lifetime. And the imprints that I felt in my body, they were still alive. It was like something that I'm experiencing in this lifetime or at that particular moment. So an inner child is bigger than who we are in this physical reality. And some of the things we may go through, some things where when someone speaks, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like I had that, but I don't have any memory. I didn't experience that. My parents were great and all that. It's got nothing to do with this lifetime, because we are multidimensional beings. And all this that has happened in other lifetimes and that happened from since we were children is still alive within us. These are the memories, these are the imprints that are within us. So I'm connecting with the inner child from this aspect of the multidimensional aspect of ourselves. That
Well, and
was,
yeah, and I personally, this is interesting. I personally don't. How can I put this? I have some very dear friends who have quote experienced past lives. All right.
yeah,
My personal sense is that I do not accept that, but at the same time, I honor what they're experiencing. I know that for them it's real. And so I
yeah,
respect that and honor that. When I've really looked at that and I've really tried to understand it, because I know it's real, what I've been able to identify for me personally is this concept of generational
yeah,
DNA memory. So,
yeah,
for some people who say, well, I believe in past lives, great, who are listening. Others who are saying, you know what, I really don't believe that. Well, don't turn this off, because there is that multi-generational DNA memory that can literally be embedded within us. So as you say, your daughter, who was what, 2 months old, and you were
yeah,
feeling all of that anger, somewhere in her life, as you say, was an experience, or somewhere generationally in the past, that she has maintained that DNA memory, that there's that anger that exists. What comes to my mind, which is interesting, is you talk about the inner child, is we look at a child, it goes back again to the religious background. Except ye be as a little child, you cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven. Now that comes out of the New Testament, right? All
yeah,
right. But what's he really saying? When I've read that and I look at that and I look at my children, or I look at my grandchildren now, because they're the ones that are little children, and I look at them, and what is it about them that is so amazing? Well, I walk into the door and they're running up and just loving me. Grandpa, how are you? I love you, and they're laughing. They get into an argument with their sibling, and then all of a sudden, 3 minutes later, they're laughing and wrestling and having fun. And so to me, what I think really, as we talk about inner child, we're talking about a quality of who we truly are, that kindness, that love, that forgiveness, all of those types of things. And yet, as you say, we get so inundated with people throwing mud at us, with generational mud being thrown at us, to the point where we're covered with all of that, so that we can't really recognize who we truly are. And so I really appreciate what you're talking about from the standpoint of helping people to really experience their inner child. Do you have any, as we get closer to the end, do you have any stories that you could share of someone who literally, through that process of identifying that inner child, has made a huge difference in their life and transformation?
Yes. And I just love what you shared about an inner child, and what came to mind most importantly is also the ability to be present and also honest. Because an inner
Yes.
child, if at the moment, it doesn't matter. You may say I love you, but if they don't feel, it's kind of like not now. I don't love you. That's just like the honest truth. But 30 seconds or 30 minutes later, it's kind of like, yeah, life moves on. They don't care about what happened. They don't hold into that. So that's the magical thing about the inner child. And what is coming to mind is one lady who she was going through a lot, but she was not aware where that was coming from. So, but because she was married, and then some things happened at work, and she stopped working like for 7 years when we started working together. And the first thing that came through actually was most of the things that she was carrying that was interfering with her life. She's kind of like became her mother. She wanted to defend her mother from the dysfunctional relationship that she was having with the father. And she took most of these things, because at times as children, we trade our energy. Like, I'm going to give you this
Yes.
and I'm going to take some of your stuff, maybe to, yeah, lighten the baggage and you'll have time for me. So she took some of this mother stuff, and she also kind of like somehow became really at war with the father, but the father was the breadwinner. So by hating the father and all that he did, somehow she also hated that money. It's kind of like because of money that all this thing is happening. And she also had a history of sexual abuse, but it was not only her, it's something that was in the family. So when something is happening a lot in the family, it's kind of like we become us. Like that happens to us. It's like, it's just like normal, whatever, we push it under the carpet. So this is the person that I helped her to connect with that aspect. And she integrated it, of which at the beginning she was also yeah, doubting, like, I don't know what this works and I don't know what you're talking about, because I'm here and I've been that child. So what you mean by disconnecting from that? But we connected to that child, that inner child, because somehow, because of the pain and being beaten since she was a child, she learned that when I cry, they're gonna think that like it's gonna satisfy them somehow. So I'm not gonna give them that. And she toughened up and shut off this child and never cried or anything, never felt her emotions. And this relationship of her father and all that was playing at work with her boss. That's why she ended up losing her job. And she was in a relationship with a great man, but at the same time, she was closed. It's kind of like, if I open my heart and let you in, you're gonna take an advantage of me the way my father took advantage of my mom. So, but we don't realize that until we start doing the work. So we worked together for 12 weeks, and a lot of shift happened, a lot of resistance. But at the end of the day, when you are willing, there is always a way. So when we completed the work and she was fully herself, fully embodied, confident, and all that, here's the magic thing that happened. She didn't apply for a job or anything. Somebody called her husband and said, "Hey, we're looking for someone who has these skills." And the husband said, "Oh, actually, my wife does that." And they said, "Okay, send your CV." And she didn't bother to update the CV or whatever, because she was not interested in any job. But she just forwarded the CV, and she had a meeting. And after that meeting, they invited her in, but they told her, "We want you, but as a consultant," and offered her 90K. And she was like, "I can't believe this, because I haven't worked for 7 years and I never thought it's possible for me to, let alone come back as a consultant. But this is what I've always wanted." So that's just the magic of aligning with a unique blueprint and saying yes to yourself. Yeah.
Oh, that's an amazing story. So, as we close, what would be the message that you want to share with the audience?
The more free you are, the more loving you can be. And if at all you are not allowing yourself to be free, you are not fully loving. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I love that. Thank you. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure being here, and thanks for having me.
Oh, I really appreciate it. And folks, I hope you get something out of this. How do they find you, Gao? How do they find you on the internet?
I'm available in all social media platforms as Gao Motsemme, GaoMotsemme. And my website is gaomotsemme.com. And I also share with you a link where you can share with your audience. And I'm giving a 45 minutes free introductory call to my work. That is, we can sit together and see what is interfering with your life. Whatever that your body is calling forth, and what you do with it is up to you. Some people get
Okay,
breakthroughs from this. Yeah.
great. Well, send me that link, and we'll go from there. Is it yourname.com or is it a different link?
My name.com is my website. It's a different link. I'll drop it for you.
Okay, I'll let you put it in the chat for me, and then I will put it in the description. So
Awesome.
anyway, folks, thanks so much for listening. Hope you really enjoyed it. Look forward to having you join us again soon. This is Dr. Doug saying namaste.